Ladies and gentlemen, we often find ourselves bewildered by the actions of those we love. When a man who professes affection seems distant, unresponsive, or even indifferent, our hearts naturally wonder, why does he ignore me? It is a question fraught with emotion, and yet, in seeking to understand it, we must step beyond immediate impulse and consider the broader realities of human nature. The first element to grasp in such situations is the complexity of love itself. Love, as we know, is not always the neatly packaged emotion that poets and songwriters would have us believe. It is multifaceted, and at times mysterious. A man who loves deeply may find himself overwhelmed by the very force of that love, and as a result, his silence may not be one of neglect, but of internal struggle. It is a struggle between his desire to protect and his recognition that true love requires space, both for self-reflection and for the growth of the relationship. The silence is not a rejection, but rather a step in a more thoughtful and perhaps more painful process of emotional evolution. Secondly, we must recognize that behavior, particularly the act of ignoring or withdrawing, can be easily misinterpreted. It is not always a conscious choice to disregard another, but an instinctive response to personal battles, fears, insecurities, or the burdens of unspoken thoughts. When a man pulls away, it may be his attempt to protect both himself and his beloved from the consequences of actions taken too hastily or words spoken in anger. Sometimes the active withdrawal is a man's attempt to avoid harming the relationship as he works through matters of his own heart. Consider the role that time and space play in the development of any meaningful relationship. Love requires a delicate balance between closeness and distance. Just as a plant needs both sunlight and shade to thrive, so too does a relationship require periods of separation to allow for personal growth. Ignoring or withdrawing can be a natural part of this process, where both individuals must tend to their own needs and strengthen their individual sense of self. It is during this time apart that the bond between them, if it is true and sincere, deepens. What appears to be neglect may in fact be a necessary pause for reflection and maturation. The complexity of love often presents itself in ways that defy simple explanations. When a man who loves you appears distant or silent, it is easy to assume that his feelings have changed or that his affection is in question. However, love is not always the straightforward emotion that it is often portrayed to be. It is multifaceted and at times requires deeper reflection and personal understanding. This is especially true when a man withdraws or becomes quiet in the face of his emotions. The nature of love itself can often cause individuals to behave in ways that are not immediately understood, even by those closest to them. In these moments, it is vital to look beyond surface-level actions and consider the deeper emotional currents at play. One aspect of love's complexity is the tension it creates within the lover. A man who loves deeply does not only experience the joy of connection, but also the weight of responsibility that comes with that love. The desire to protect, to be a source of support, and to ensure that the relationship remains stable can create an emotional burden that may cause him to retreat inwardly, or this withdrawal is not an indication of a lack of love, but rather an expression of the overwhelming nature of his feelings. It may be that he is grappling with the fear of failure, of not being able to meet the expectations that come with loving someone so fully. In such a state, he may seek silence and space as a means of coping, trying to find clarity within himself before he can fully engage in the relationship once more. Love is also complicated by the reality that it is not just an emotional state, but a process of continuous growth. For a man, as for anyone, the journey of love is often not linear. It involves not only the joining of two lives, but also the growth of each individual within that dynamic. This can sometimes lead to moments where a person feels overwhelmed by the evolution of the relationship or by the pressures of personal development. A man who loves deeply may feel a sense of inadequacy or even fear that he is not growing in the right direction, or that his growth may somehow negatively affect the relationship. The silence or withdrawal can, therefore, be his attempt to sort through these emotions. Rather than rushing to provide answers or make decisions, he may retreat to process the internal changes that are taking place within him. This space is necessary for him to reflect on how he fits into the relationship and how he can best show love in the way that is healthy for both himself and his partner. Love often involves confronting one's vulnerabilities. To love another person deeply is to open oneself to the possibility of emotional harm, of being hurt or misunderstood. This vulnerability is not always easy to manage, and for many people it can lead to periods of introspection and isolation. A man who loves you may retreat into silence, not because he is no longer interested in you, but because he is trying to protect himself from the emotional risks that come with love. In these moments, his silence is not a rejection, but rather a defense mechanism that allows him to regain emotional balance. He may need to process his fears, uncertainties, or insecurities before he can express himself fully again. His retreat may be a way of protecting the relationship from the turmoil of unresolved emotions, allowing both parties the time to regain composure before re-engaging. 39. The complexity of love also lies in its ability to reveal hidden parts of ourselves. Love forces individuals to confront their own flaws, their past experiences, and their deepest fears. For a man, this might mean grappling with issues of inadequacy, emotional baggage, or unresolved past hurts. These are not easy emotions to face, and they often require time and space to process. In such moments, a man may withdraw not because he is no longer in love, but because he is dealing with the emotional fallout of these revelations. Love demands that he confront these aspects of himself, and this can sometimes be a painful and isolating experience. Silence in this case is not an absence of love, but rather a necessary step in the journey of emotional healing. It is important to understand that love itself is not static. It is an evolving emotion that grows and changes over time. A man who loves you deeply may experience periods of withdrawal not because his feelings have diminished, but because he is navigating the complexities of his own emotional development. Just as individuals change and mature, so too does love. In many cases, a period of silence or distance can signal an attempt to navigate the shifting dynamics of the relationship, to ensure that it remains strong and true. It is during these moments of reflection and withdrawal that a deeper understanding of one another can emerge, allowing the love to evolve in a healthier, more meaningful way. When a man who loves you withdraws or becomes silent, the natural reaction is often to misinterpret his actions. The lack of communication or engagement is frequently assumed to be a sign of indifference, perhaps even the end of affection. However, understanding human behavior, especially in the context of love, requires a more nuanced perspective. Silence or apparent neglect should not always be viewed as a rejection. Rather, it can be an expression of deeper emotional processes that are not immediately visible. This misinterpretation of behavior arises from the difficulty many people have in distinguishing between what appears to be a lack of interest and what might actually be an internal struggle or necessary emotional retreat. One of the key reasons for this misinterpretation is the natural tendency to view behavior through the lens of personal insecurity. When a man distances himself, the person on the receiving end may automatically feel that their worth or the relationship is in question. This is particularly true if one's self-esteem is closely tied to constant validation and communication. However, it is important to recognize that a man's withdrawal is not necessarily an indictment of his feelings for you. Rather, it may be his way of navigating his own emotional state. It could be that he is dealing with pressures, be they external or internal, that have nothing to do with the person he loves, but everything to do with his own sense of identity, personal struggles, or even his need for space to process overwhelming emotions. The act of withdrawing is not motivated by a desire to hurt or neglect the other person. Instead, it can be a form of self-protection. Love, particularly deep love, makes us vulnerable. When a man feels that the emotional weight of his feelings is becoming too much to carry, he may retreat into silence as a way to guard his own emotions. This is not an act of rejection. Rather, it is an instinctual response to the fear of becoming too overwhelmed. The idea of withdrawing as a protective mechanism is something that is often overlooked, yet it is one of the most common reasons for silence in relationships. In this context, a man's withdrawal is not a message that he no longer cares. It is simply his way of ensuring that he does not unintentionally harm the relationship by acting out of frustration or confusion. Misunderstanding silence can occur when we fail to account for the fact that emotional processes are not always linear. Just as love has its moments of joy and passion, it also has moments of uncertainty and doubt. A man who loves you may at times need to retreat into solitude to sort through his own feelings. These moments are often not indicative of the death of love, but a part of the ebb and flow of a deeper emotional journey. The withdrawal is merely a necessary pause for reflection, and misunderstanding it as a sign of fading affection can lead to unnecessary distress. It is important to appreciate that silence is not a permanent state, but a temporary one. It is a space in which both partners are allowed to recalibrate and reconnect with their own emotions before re-engaging with one another. It is important to understand that the act of withdrawal does not always imply emotional turmoil or crisis. In some cases, a man might simply need time to process his thoughts and feelings in a more internalized way. This need for introspection is a normal part of any relationship, yet it is often misunderstood. In many relationships, communication is seen as the primary way to express love and affection. However, for some individuals, emotional expression can take place in more subtle ways. Silence in this case is not a reflection of emotional withdrawal, but a form of communication in itself. It may be that he is processing his emotions in a way that does not immediately translate into outward expressions of affection or engagement. Recognizing this distinction is crucial in avoiding misinterpretations that can unnecessarily strain the relationship. There is also the possibility that the silence or distance is rooted in a need for independence. Many individuals, especially those who value their autonomy, may struggle with balancing intimacy and personal freedom. A man who loves you may find himself in need of space to maintain his sense of self and individuality. This is not an indication of his lack of commitment or care, but rather an expression of his desire to retain a sense of independence while still nurturing the relationship. In these moments, his silence may be a signal that he is trying to find a balance between being connected to you and honoring his own need for personal space. Misunderstanding this need for independence can lead to feelings of insecurity, but it is important to recognize that true love allows for this freedom. His silence, in this case, is a means of ensuring that the relationship remains healthy by allowing both individuals to maintain their own identities. Another key reason for misinterpreting withdrawal behavior is the tendency to assume that love should always be expressed in overt, immediate ways. In reality, love can manifest in subtler forms. A man who loves you may not always express his feelings through constant communication or grand gestures. Sometimes his love is expressed through actions, such as caring for you in more practical ways or simply offering support in quiet moments. His silence does not necessarily mean that he is emotionally disengaged. It may be a reflection of his internal way of processing love. This subtler form of expression can easily be overlooked if one expects love to always be loud and constant. It is important to recognize that love in all its forms does not always have to be expressed in the same way. Each person has their own method of showing affection, and understanding this can help prevent misinterpretations. Misunderstandings can arise when there is a lack of communication about emotional needs and expectations. When a man withdraws, it is often because he feels that he needs time to sort through his emotions, but he may not always communicate this need clearly. This lack of communication can lead to confusion and assumptions. It is crucial for both partners to openly discuss their emotional needs, particularly when one person feels the urge to retreat. Miscommunication about these needs can lead to feelings of frustration and insecurity, which only deepen the misunderstanding. In healthy relationships, both individuals should feel comfortable expressing their need for space, reflection, or solitude, without fear of judgment or misinterpretation. Understanding the reasons behind a man's silence requires patience and empathy. Instead of immediately assuming that his withdrawal is a sign of disinterest or emotional abandonment, it is essential to consider the possibility that he is working through something internally. By recognizing the complexity of emotional processes and the various reasons why a person might need space, we can avoid jumping to conclusions and instead respond with greater understanding and compassion. Love is not a static entity. It evolves, deepens, and shifts over time. For a relationship to remain healthy and enduring, both partners must grow individually while also nurturing their bond together. This delicate balance requires periods of space and separation, as these moments allow both individuals to reflect on their personal development and reinvest in the relationship with fresh perspectives. When a man who loves you seems to withdraw or become distant, it is not necessarily a sign of diminishing affection, but rather an indication that the relationship is undergoing a necessary phase of growth and reflection. These periods of distance are not only natural, but essential for fostering a deeper, more resilient connection. The idea that love requires space can be difficult to grasp, especially in a culture that often equates constant contact and communication with love and affection. We are conditioned to expect that if someone loves us, they should always be present, always available, and always vocal in their expressions of affection. This expectation can lead to frustration when, instead, we encounter moments of silence or withdrawal. However, true love is not about maintaining a constant, unbroken presence, but about allowing each individual to have the space they need to grow. Just as a plant requires sunlight, water, and time to grow, so too does a relationship need the right conditions to flourish. Space allows each person to breathe, to reconnect with their sense of self, and to grow emotionally. It is during these periods of separation that the foundation for a deeper, more committed relationship is built. In the case of a man who loves you, the need for space can stem from a variety of factors. One primary reason for this need is that personal growth and reflection are necessary for maintaining a healthy sense of self within a relationship. When two people are emotionally close, it is easy for one partner to lose sight of their own individuality, to become too enmeshed in the other person's needs and desires. It grows dishonestly. The act of taking space is, in many ways, a self-preserving act. A man may need time apart to ensure that he is not sacrificing his own identity in the name of the relationship. This space allows him to reconnect with his personal interests, goals, and sense of autonomy. By doing so, he ensures that he can return to the relationship as a more balanced, emotionally stable person, ready to engage more fully and meaningfully with his partner. Another aspect of love that requires space is the emotional maturation that both partners undergo over time. As people change, so too does the way they experience love and connection. These changes may not always align perfectly, and sometimes a bit of distance is necessary for both individuals to process their evolving emotional needs. A man who loves you may go through phases where his emotional needs shift, and during these times he may need space to explore those changes. This is especially true when life circumstances such as career pressures, personal goals, or even family dynamics require a temporary shift in focus. While it might feel unsettling, these periods of emotional recalibration are necessary for maintaining a healthy balance within the relationship. A man's withdrawal during these times is not a rejection, but rather a reflection of his need to understand himself more fully and ensure that he is emotionally equipped to continue the relationship in a way that honors both his own needs and those of his partner. Emotional growth within a relationship often requires periods of silence and reflection to process complex feelings. In relationships, especially those that are deep and meaningful, emotions are rarely simple or one-dimensional. Love involves a wide range of feelings, from joy and passion to doubt and fear. These emotions can sometimes become overwhelming, and it is in the quieter moments, when a person retreats from the constant noise of daily life, that they are able to process and integrate these feelings. For a man, the process of reflecting on his emotions, understanding them, and determining how best to express them can be a lengthy and often solitary journey. It is in these moments of space that he is able to reflect on his feelings toward the relationship, assess his own emotional landscape, and return with a renewed understanding of both himself and his partner. To emotional growth, space also allows for problem solving and conflict resolution. Relationships are rarely without their challenges, and sometimes when faced with disagreements or tension, it is essential to take a step back. When a man withdraws, it may be his way of giving himself the space to think through the situation without reacting impulsively. Taking time apart can allow both partners to cool down, gain perspective, and approach the issue at hand with more clarity and emotional maturity. This space is essential for healthy conflict resolution. When emotions run high, the ability to pause, reflect, and return to the conversation with a calmer, more thoughtful approach can make all the difference in maintaining the integrity of the relationship. The idea of space is crucial in creating a sense of mutual respect within the relationship. Just as we need space to grow individually, we also need space to respect one another's boundaries and autonomy. For a relationship to thrive, both individuals must feel that they are valued not only for their connection to each other, but also for their individual identities. A man who loves you might retreat into silence or spend time away from the relationship, not because he is distancing himself emotionally, but because he is consciously giving you the space to maintain your own sense of self. This act of respect allows both partners to feel secure in their independence while still being emotionally connected. It is an expression of trust and respect, demonstrating that both individuals value each other's personal growth as much as their shared bond. The concept of space also plays a significant role in the long-term sustainability of a relationship. As time goes on, relationships can become routine, and the initial intensity of passion and connection may ebb. During these times, taking space allows both partners to avoid the pitfalls of complacency and stagnation. It gives both individuals the opportunity to renew their commitment to the relationship and rediscover what they love about each other. Without these breaks, relationships can easily become stagnant, leading to feelings of frustration or emotional burnout. Space, therefore, is not only a mechanism for personal growth, but also a tool for relationship renewal. It allows both partners to come back to one another with fresh eyes, a clearer heart, and a deeper sense of appreciation for the relationship itself.